Vladimir Putin's Russia poses the greatest current threat to NATO. Those are the words of German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in a keynote speech delivered a short time ago to Germany's armed forces, the Bundeswehr. Scholz told German military leaders that they should accept that Russia will define itself as an adversary to the European Union, the US and NATO for the foreseeable future. And he said Germany's armed forces must become the best equipped military force in Europe.
Germany is ready to take on leadership responsibility for the security of our continent. As the most populous nation in Europe, with the largest economy, and as a country in the middle of the continent, our army must become a cornerstone of conventional defence in Europe and become the best equipped military force. That is the goal. And we should be motivated by the knowledge that our European partners and friends do not perceive this goal as a threat, but as reassurance.
DW's chief political correspondent Melinda Crane followed the Chancellor's speech, and I asked her earlier if the German military is really ready to take on a leading role in Europe's security.
Certainly, the military is still very under-equipped. The Chancellor himself acknowledged major gaps and deficits in military readiness and said that, in fact, the Bundeswehr is working on multiple fronts at the moment to try to close those gaps, not least with increasing budgetary support. But as we heard there, he did make it clear that he sees this as an absolutely top priority, that Germany equip the Bundeswehr in such a way that it can become a foundational pillar of European security. And he mentioned Germany's friends and allies in that remark that we just heard. In fact, many friends and allies found themselves asking in February, after the Chancellor gave his historic turning point speech, whether this represents the moment when Germany finally starts punching at its weight and actually assuming a security and defense role commensurate with its economic role in Europe. And clearly the Chancellor was saying here, we are ready to do that. He said sometimes he's heard people ask, well, this new 100 billion special fund to equip the Bundeswehr, does that mean it's going to be business as usual but with a little more money? And he said, no, it's not. We have a different set of priorities going forward. Now, certainly that will be music to the ears of those who are looking for Germany to take on more leadership in that division of responsibility within NATO. But many will still be waiting to see whether this government is ready to walk the talk.
Absolutely. And what else did the Chancellor say in his speech?
Well, many people who were waiting to see whether he would mention additional weapons deliveries and military support for Ukraine will have been disappointed. That was not on his agenda. But in fact, the defense minister had said yesterday that Germany will now be supplying multiple missile launchers and also armored vehicles to Ukraine. Not, however, the battle tanks that Ukraine itself has been pushing for. And beyond that, there was a very clear acknowledgement from Chancellor Scholz that when the government looks to the risks that Germany and Europe face, as you mentioned earlier, Russia is absolutely at the top of the threat list, but that these threats are not simply conventional military and defense threats, but very much also cybersecurity threats, energy security threats that demand an all-of-government approach really far beyond the military alone, and that also demand much stronger coordination with allies.
DW's Melinda Crane, thanks so much for that. And now to some of the other stories making news around the world. Berlin has put the German subsidiary of Russian oil giant Rosneft under trusteeship. Now, that means a federal regulator will take control of a large refinery in the eastern German town of Schwedt, which used to draw 100% of its oil from Russia. Germany has committed to ending all Russian oil imports and is looking for alternative sources to keep the refinery running. And the Russian President Vladimir Putin has hailed the growing influence of what he called new centres of power at a summit with Asian leaders, including China's Xi Jinping, in Uzbekistan. He's keen to show Russia has not been fully isolated by the conflict in Ukraine. Putin also denounced the use of sanctions by Western nations over his invasion.